my friends, and welcome to episode 35 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Pasquale Veri.
And I am Claudius Pera. Welcome to the show, everyone. You know, guys, James Campion is a syndicated columnist and a contributing editor for the pop culture magazine, the Aquarian Weekly, where he's reported on and interviewed several unburied rock stars and reviewed concerts and albums for 24 years. So his work has appeared on many periodicals and webzines, including the official Kiss site, Kiss Online.
He is also the author of 8 nonfiction books, including, of course, Shout It Out Loud, The Story of Kiss's Destroyer. Now, with the recent released box set to commemorate the 45th anniversary of Destroyer, James is here to talk about, you guessed it, all things Destroyer. So, James, welcome to the show. It's such an honor to have you here.
Thank you both. Thank you. It is an honor. Well, Jess, thank you very much. Plug. It's great to be on. I was just telling these guys before we started recording, it's great to be on a show to talk about Kiss again. It's been forever for me. I promoted the book, and when it came out, I think in 2015 or something like that. And I really got a kick out of it. And then I moved on to other things. And but I still have Kiss in my heart. And when this Destroyer thing came out, I was like, wow, it'd be great to talk about it again. So thank you for having me.
No, James, I have to be honest, I'm not a person that's really into Kiss minutia, and I mentioned it on the episode quite often. But this book, it is so well written, so well structured, so well put together. It's really a lot of detail, but it's an easy and fascinating read. Really difficult to put down, and definitely one of my favorites. Honestly, love this book.
Well, absolutely. I have to second that. We were talking before, James, congratulations. This is a great read, for any Kiss fan that likes to go into the details. And you know what? So I remember I read it twice because I was going, really detailed and slowly. And then I also had the experience of going through the book as an audiobook. And that was a hell of a trip. I'm telling you, when you go to each one of the chapters, and we're going to cover that in the podcast. But once again, it's such a pleasure to have you in.
Thank you both. And anytime a Kiss fan, that was my big worry, is to make the Kiss fans happy, because I didn't dive into it. I didn't dive into the project for that reason. But ultimately, as I kept working on it, I thought, man, I really hope that the true Kiss fans, people clearly, as I see in the backgrounds here, you guys are, and having a podcast. So to get your accolades and to say that you really enjoyed it, it was a fun read, it's the best compliment you can give a writer.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Thank you.
James, we're going to get going. Can you please set the stage for our listeners and create a foundation that led up to all of your accomplishments to date? So could you please tell us about, the rebellious young boy from Manhattan, who had a love for comic books, reading, writing, and music? So give us some info.
It's funny you say that because in the year that I was introduced to Destroyer, I was 13 years old. It was the summer of 1976. I had just graduated 8th grade. And I got Kiss Alive for my 8th grade graduation. So it's funny, and my daughter's 13 now, so that's kind of weird seeing her at that age. And that's when I was blown away. But I remember writing in my yearbook, because they have a yearbook for your 8th grade when you graduate grammar school here in the States. And I put down, what do you want to do with your life? And I put down writer, which, at that time I didn't know. But the thing that inspired me to write was really Stan Lee and comic books. I had read Stan Lee's at that time, his autobiography, which was the origins of Marvel Comics. And I thought he had a great statement in there, which was the art of writing, to telling the stories, it's the best feeling in the world when someone takes that came out of your head and puts it at their bedside table at the end of the night after they've read it and went to bed. And I thought, that's what I want. I want to be able to tell stories that put people to sleep. No, I'm kidding. But I think, and so it's funny because just when I was getting introduced to Kiss, strangely enough, I got introduced to true dramatic writing in comic books, and then of course novels later on in life and studying journalism. But that never left me. And that's why when I wrote this book, I tried to tap into what the 13-year-old me was thinking, what it meant to me, and what Kiss meant to me, and what that record meant to me. And that's why, you know, when the box set, and that's coming out soon, when that was introduced, I was like, well, I have to get it. And my good friend who contributed to my effort, Ken Sharp, wrote the liner notes for it. I can't wait to read it. I'm very proud of Ken, and he's done some amazing work with Kiss. But yeah, I mean, I was originally inspired by comic books, but I went and studied journalism, started writing about sports first, and then eventually music. And that's my main focus over the last, say, 20 years. Yeah.
So, of course, you wrote the book, Shout It Out Loud, The Story of Kiss's Destroyer. And based on the amount of detail in this book, it's really clear that you're a diehard Kiss fan. So how did you get into Kiss? And did it have anything to do with maybe their rebellious nature in their music?
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's what a lot of people ask me. I was a Kiss fan then. So my Kiss time, as I mentioned, I got Kiss Alive when I was 13, graduated. And then later on that summer, I knew Destroyer had been out because it came out in March. So I picked that up. And then I remember I picked up Dress to Kill. So I kind of went back a little bit. And then from that point, I remember, and I've said this many times on interviews and podcasts, and Kiss fans fall out of their chairs. So please, gentlemen, stay in your chairs.
Okay, we'll do.
When Rock and Roll Over came up, and I like that record, but when that came out in the fall of '76, I was disappointed. I thought Destroyer was the way I wanted them to stay with Bob Ezrin and make it sound like the Alice Cooper albums I loved. Kiss I wanted them to be cinematic and theatrical. And I know they went back to their original sound and Eddie Kramer and recorded live at that Nanuet Theater for Rock and Roll Over, but they kind of lost me a little bit. And then, you know, you get older and you start getting into, I got into new wave and punk and Elvis Costello and Joe Jackson. And then, you know, into college, I started learning about the older bands like the Stones and the Doors. And then, you know, so Kiss kind of faded a little bit. And then I remember my brother got me The Elder for my birthday or something, or around Christmas time, right? And that came out in '81. And I thought, wow, this is cool. They're back with Bob Ezrin. So I always went, you know, back and forth with Kiss. But then everybody I interviewed for the book said the same thing that I felt. And I'm sure you guys felt. Once Kiss is absorbed into your DNA, it doesn't ever leave. It's amazing.
It is.
Bringing their grandchildren to these cruises or the concerts. It really did take over then. And that's really what I tried to capture in the book, is a place in time, you know, the period from 1975 through 76 when Kiss was working on this record and eventually put it out and toured it.
You know, it is true. And actually, I'm happy you touch on that nerve, because you're not the first one, you know, saying that, you know, the famous, you know, trilogy, you know, like speaking of Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun. But it's been a topic of discussion, you know, whether Kiss should have stayed in the Bob Ezrin kind of sound and approach, instead of going back to the roots with Eddie Kramer and, you know, the well-known stuff. But you know, I agree with you. It's unique. You know, Destroyer is really unique, and I think that Bob Ezrin, when he came back for The Elder, and then later on with Revenge, it proved, you know, that this guy, he makes things differently, you know, and the band reacted so differently at that time, you know, when they recorded the album. So it's a very unique thing, you know. So, of course, for the rest of this episode, we're going to be talking about the book and the Destroyer box set. But before we do that, you mentioned something about The Elder. So you wrote a very interesting article in 2016 entitled Music from The Elder, Explaining the Kiss Album Everyone Hates. So can you give us a synopsis of the main theme of this article?
So I was asked by a German news magazine called Rock. So that was published in Germany. So that was the English translation that you could find online now. And thank you for bringing that up, because not a lot of people do. At the time, my good friend Julian Gill, who hosts the Kiss FAQ website and podcast, has written several books about it, and Tim McFate. We were, you know, Julian and I were talking. He had me on his show, and we were, you know, and he was working on the Elder book, which is also a fantastic read and wonderfully done. Talk about minutia. And we were talking about it, and then they wanted me to write, because I had written a Kiss book and mainly talked a lot about Bob Ezrin and what they did to the band. They wanted me to write about what happened between the transition of Unmasked, more of the new wavy poppy record that kind of was the end of Peter Criss, and then The Elder and that transition. So I took it from the standpoint, and having been deeply immersed in Destroyer, I was able to get back to Bob and ask him some questions about The Elder. And of course, Dennis Wallach, who did a lot of the designs, all of the designs for Kiss in the 70s and into the 80s, who designed the door and the whole thing. And I was able to keep using that because the book had just come out. I had those connections. So, and it's funny, even though I wrote it's the album, because that's really the story, right? The myth of it is that everybody, the band hated it, Bob hated it, but they really don't. And funnily enough, just a couple of days ago, Kiss finally acknowledged the fact that they released this thing in the whatever 30th anniversary or whatever anniversary this is. It was 1981, right? Well, how's my math? 40 years or something?
Yeah.
So they and whenever they play a snippet of something on the cruises or the conventions, people go crazy for it.
Yeah, everybody go nuts.
Yes. So the myth around it is people hate it. But I think I came to the conclusion, if you read the piece, that it was just Kiss didn't do the same things that other bands did. I loved Aerosmith and AC/DC too, right? But if you listen to those, you know what you're getting when you get an Aerosmith record. But with Kiss, you think about Destroyer. Think about going from Destroyer to Rock and Roll Over. Think about going from, Unmasked to The Elder and then to Creatures of the Night. They're not doing the same thing over and over again. And I applaud them for that. And I think that was really the central theme of that piece.
Okay.
I like what Claudio said earlier. Bob Ezrin does things really differently. And it's interesting because when Destroyer came out, it wasn't that popular. Fans didn't like it. It was too different for their taste. Elder came out. It was too different for their taste. Elder, even now, it's becoming a classic. Fans love it. Destroyer, we all know the classic that Destroyer is.
Right.
It really says something about Bob Ezrin that, what he does, we really have to sit back and just soak it in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's an experience.
Yeah.
Bob understood that, and he was my Wizard of Oz. I had to have Bob if I was going to do the book. And even though I had reached out to all the Kiss camps, Gene and Paul, and then Ace was very nice. He supported the book after the fact, but he was working on his memoir at the time. Peter Criss was a little standoffish, and I felt like if I couldn't get them all, I didn't want to get one. I didn't want it to be an Ace book or a Peter book or a Gene and Paul book. But getting the guys behind the scenes and getting Bob especially was important. But I think you guys, you make a great point, Pasquale, the thing is, there is this idea that true Kiss fans didn't like it and they panicked. And that's true. There's truth. But I don't think it's to the nth degree. That record sold beautifully when it came out. It just stopped selling. I think a lot of that had to do with it was piggybacking the popularity of Kiss Alive. People couldn't wait to hear what Kiss was going to do next. But also, I think, and then, of course, it came back up with Beth later on. But I think it was popular. I think what happened was Kiss lost every magazine that backed them. When everybody, Rolling Stone and Crawdad, and all these other magazines were like, this is a stupid act. Cream and Circus stayed with them and punched it. It was those two reviews, I think, that spooked the heck out of them. And they went to Bill Aucoin and said, what do we do? And Bill Aucoin sent a letter that Bob had read to me saying, we can't retain you as producer because it's just too much of a departure and we need to get back to the way it was.
Right.
So I think there is that myth. I don't think it was totally true that all Kiss fans didn't like it. I think it did spook them enough. But I think that's when you're doing, I think David Bowie said, when you're doing something in art that pushes the boundaries outside of your comfort zone, then you're on to something.
Yeah.
And that's why I applaud Kiss for doing that.
True, so true. And also, you touch on a couple of topics in your book, but, not only, what Bill discussed with Bob, but also, I think that Bob didn't have the full support from all four members. We all know that Peter and Ace, right. He was not their favorite, producer, but maybe they were more comfortable with Eddie Kramer for sure. So maybe they wanted to make those two guys happy, so who knows? Yeah,
especially Ace, because Ace, of course, went on to do his famous The Best Kiss solo album with Eddie.
Yeah.
But I think the funny thing about Peter is, if you ask any Kiss fan, and I'm sure I'll ask you guys, is there a more important Kiss album? Maybe Kiss Alive, because he's so brilliant on it. It's the only thing that Eddie Kramer claims he didn't do any overdubbing on, was the drums on that record. even Peter said he did drumming on that record on Destroyer that he never conceived of. His drums sound so amazing on that record. And of course it has Beth, which is still the highest charting Kiss single ever in America. I know Shout It Out Loud went to #1 in Canada, actually, I believe. But I mean, in America and overall in the Billboard charts. And that's a full Peter thing. And so funnily enough, he had his greatest moment with Bob Ezrin.
True. Yeah.
And even Ace, by the way, Ace says, even to this day, a solo that he didn't write, the amazing solo in Detroit Rock City. He says in Ken Sharp's book, Behind the Mask, this is the best thing that we ever did solo-wise in Kiss. Yeah. That's Ace Frehley saying that, who told me in an interview he never thought about solos until he sat down and did it. And a lot of time it was about the 5th or 6th one when he finally got it. This one was hummed out and played out on a piano for him and the guys. And he still says it's amazing. Yeah. So even though those two guys did give Bob a lot of headaches and they ran back to Eddie Kramer, I think they did some fine work on that record.
Oh, yeah, they have to thank Bob. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, they were pushed beyond their limits, and they did well because of it.
I agree. And the whole boot camp thing fascinates me. And it's all there on vinyl. Today, I've literally played... The reason why I wrote that book, really, was in college, I used to get into these symposiums of other people who were studying to be rock journalists, and we would always bring up great rock albums or great significant albums of the 70s. And don't you know, I always brought up Destroyer, and don't you know, I was the only one to ever do it. They're all bringing up Tapestry and Rumors and Dark Side of the... and for the right reasons. But they always skipped over Kiss, even though Kiss dominated. Trust me, I grew up in that era. They dominated much of the period. At least for younger boys, for certain, and especially suburban boys. And I always thought that got the short shrifts. And then once I started to dive into it and I realized what went into that record and how much guts and learning and restructuring of the band and how much Bob pushed them and the engineers pushed them and the sound of the thing, I think I was proven, it was so great to dive in and I was proven right. It's a I think it's a rock masterpiece.
Mm-hmm. It is a masterpiece. The time is basically given us, it's a proof, right? Because, so many accolades now, everybody recognizes, that every song there, it's a classic now. So
think about it, right? So they still play Detroit Rock City. Occasionally they do play King of the Nighttime. While I was watching a tape of them playing in Detroit when they did the comeback, when they got back together. And I think they played King of the Nighttime World on that show. And they still do the Beth thing, even though Eric Singer sings it, but they still do it. Shout It Out Loud, obviously a staple. Do You Love Me? They still play.
God of Thunder.
God of Thunder is Gene's song forevermore. So yeah, it's funny. A lot of Kiss fans will say that. And I think the proof really, guys, not to bring it back to that, but Kiss decided to finally go back in the vaults and give the fans what everybody's been doing. Everybody's doing it. Metallica's doing it. All these bands are doing these full-on box sets. Even though Kiss puts out so much merchandise, I mean, look behind you. I mean, Claudio, I mean, it's there, but they've never done anything like this. And they do it for the first time for Destroyer. And there's I'm hoping, I can't wait to get my box set, but I'm from what I'm hearing, all those demos that I talk about in my book and that I listen to the crappy, bootlegs of are on this thing in pristine sound. And I can't wait to hear the new mastering that they did at Abbey Road. I mean, think about it. So excited for this.
Absolutely. Same here.
No, and it's no coincidence that they used Destroyer as their first major box set. And every time they come out with a new album, it's their new Destroyer. Everything's compared to Destroyer.
Right.
Everything they do is Destroyer.
I
wonder why that is.
Yeah. It's like every time, I remember for like about 30 years, every time the Stones had a new album, this is the Exile on Main Street.
Right, exactly.
No, that's an excellent point. And so I'm just wondering, what other box set? I mean, I'm not saying I'm sure you'd love to hear any box sets, right? But what other one besides Destroyer? I mean, maybe if they had the other live shows, like the Raw of the 6 or 5 or 6 or live shows that they taped, I wonder if that would be a really cool box set, worthy of what it meant in history.
Right.
Yeah. But I think as a studio album, there's no doubt that it's Destroyer, man. That's the number one. That's the number one.
No, at the time of this recording, the box set hasn't come out yet. And this episode is going to be released after the box set is released. So we got to do like another episode, Claudio, because
Yeah,
I
big
can't
time.
wait to get my hands on that box
That's right.
set.
That's
I'm
right.
going to lay it out on a table, listen to the music, and go over every single detail
Yeah.
of that box set for days.
And
Yeah.
I think, I'll come on anytime you want to talk about Destroyer or Kiss. I certainly, gentlemen. I will say the one thing that you have to look forward to, and we all have heard it. It's on YouTube. We all have the boots of the original God of Thunder, Paul, singing it.
Yeah.
And then giving it over to Gene. And of course, the Detroit Rock City without all the aria in the middle and the things that all the dynamics that Bob did for the song. I mean, just hearing those alone are worth it, because you could hear the evolution of where this record went. And by the way, it's an evolution that only went over a couple of months. One of the myths that I busted and I found out when I was researching this book is, when I was a kid, you always heard this story. Well, Kiss Alive came out, so they needed to really make the next record great, so there was pressure on them. But they had already started working on Destroyer and hired Bob Ezrin in late 74, early 75.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we're already and Corky Stasiak told me, who was the assistant engineer, he said they came in paupers and they left stars while we were working on this record. Of course, by the time they went to sit in the record plant after boot camp and everything else, it was already January of 1976. By that point, Kiss Alive had come out, in late September, and boom through October and November and Christmas time. So they already knew that their lives, their careers were saved, their relationship with Casablanca Records was saved, and they now had a career. So yes, it amped it up a lot in the studio when they recorded it, but the impetus for putting it together and getting Ezrin was long before Alive was even recorded.
Yeah.
So I want to start to go deep into your book, Shout It Out Loud. And I mentioned at the top of the show that, again, I love the way the book is organized into chapters, and every chapter begins basically with a song from Destroyer. So let's start with Detroit Rock City. Let's talk about history and Destroyer with Detroit Rock City, the Kiss Act.
Detroit Rock City, I think, is the greatest Kiss song. I just think it is. And now everybody's got their favorite songs, and that's just I just spent the last year plus writing about Hey Jude, which is my favorite Beatles song. So I always wanted to write. I wrote a book about one album, so I wanted to write a book about one song, and it's a difficult thing to do, but I did. And so everybody's got their favorite fill in the blank song, right? And so, but for me, Detroit Rock City has everything that makes Kiss great. It's got a driving ostinato guitar part. It's got the harmony guitars. So, Paul and Ace are doing that thing that they do so well on so many songs like Black Diamond and other songs like and Rock Bottom. And then, it's the best Peter drum. And that drumming is spectacularly good. And it just sounds, even when I wasn't into Kiss in my later teens and 20s, and then I would still always throw on Detroit Rock City, always throw on Destroyer. And that one hit me right in the face. Love that. And it's one of the great openers ever. And I don't know what you guys think, but I'm one of those people who are a fan of that first 1 minute and 40-second little novella that Bob put in at the end.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
I love it. A lot of people do complain about that. Like, what the hell is this? Even my friends when I play on the record. But as a kid with the headphones on.
Oh my God, you're flying. That's
You're
right.
flying. You're
That's
in the car with the guy. And I just think it's magnificent.
Oh,
work.
Magnificent. It is.
So
And it was the first time that Kiss, I think Paul Stanley wrote about something other than just sex and
Of course.
party.
Yeah.
So you touched in the book that Kiss, when they first started off, they were hungry to make it, and after Alive, they were there. So around when Destroyer came out, where was the band in terms of what they wanted in terms of their success and in terms of their direction?
Right. So I wrote this book because I wanted to prove that Kiss merited quality writing, or not that I had to be the one to do it. I'm saying that they deserved a good deconstruction and celebration that was above all the salacious stuff or the face paint or the blowing things up.
The visuals and all of that.
I think that's important. I'm one of those guys who don't believe it's like just the music. It's definitely the whole package, which is what I loved about Alice Cooper. And in the 70s, you needed to do that. Bowie, You needed to take it to that next level and then challenge other bands to do it. And we all were shocked when you go out to see a band and they were all just, as Gene used to say, looking at their moccasins while they played, you know, go out there and give them the show. But getting back to Destroyer, what they did during that period was they were really in dire straits. So when I started, my original idea was to write about and give the band a higher plane. But what I discovered was how close they were to not being Kiss, to not continuing. You know, they were suing the label was suing them. They were not getting paid royalties because the label was hacking themselves to pay for all those explosions. Alice Cooper told me himself that he and his management sat down, even Bob said it, and talked about how Kiss was blowing them out of the water with theatrics and money put into their show. So that's why he decided to do Welcome to My Nightmare. That was such a big, huge thing that the rest of Alice Cooper band left him because he wanted to compete with Kiss. Meanwhile, Kiss had fooled them. That's why I call it the act in the book. Kiss always acted as if they were bigger than even what they had. The fake amps in the back, the explosion. They were spending money they didn't have to make them look like superstars.
They still do. They still do.
After all these years. So they were broke, and the record company was broke, and their manager, Bill Aucoin, is broke, and they don't know what they're going to do. And then they get those tapes of Alive because, let's face it, they didn't want to spend any more money in the studio, Casablanca, and Kiss didn't want to go in the studio to sell another 75,000, 100,000 copies of a record. So why not just tape these damn things, the live shows, and put them out? They had no idea that was going to make it. They were still scrambling, and when they got Bob, they were really in dire straits. And even Corky Stasiak said that Bob Ezrin gave all the guys that worked on the record a pep talk and said, we really need to help these guys. They need our help. They're better than their record sales are showing. They're so good live. We got to give them an image, a sound that's equal to what they're putting out on the road. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think they nailed it with Destroyer, for sure.
Good point, because in your next chapter, King of the Nighttime World, you talk about Bob Ezrin. Now, do you believe that Kiss would have continued without Bob?
Oh, you mean without Destroyer? Do you think?
Without Bob doing Destroyer, without Bob's influence? No,
I don't. I mean, I know those guys are relentless. You have to remember too, and you guys know this. Gene and Paul would have started in 5 other bands. They were never going to give up, right? Yeah. But Peter and Ace were at this time, they were still dedicated, but there was that feeling of, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Face painting, blowing things up. It's not about the music as much, and we're not selling records. So what's the point of this, right? So they really needed to sell records. They couldn't just, and they did it with Alive, but they did it with Alive, not a studio record. And that's not how things are done. So I think Beth absolutely saved Kiss. I don't think without Beth, they brought the record back, put them on the Paul Lynde special. A whole generation watched that the way kids watched, you know, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And it catapulted them to a different level. It gave them, you know, we talked about Marvel Comics earlier. It put them on the cover. It gave them their own comic book. It gave them their own movie. Later on, their cartoon. So they became this larger than life, bigger than the rock scene avenue that they didn't have before. But I truly don't believe, and I think I pointed out in my book, I don't think Kiss, that's why I'm saying it's the making of an American icon. It's not just the story of Destroyer, it's the making of Kiss as we know it now. Maybe they might have gone on a little bit and had cult fans, you know, and done some stuff, but there's no way the Kiss that we know from the late 70s exists without Destroyer. No way, I don't think so.
I agree, fully agree, yeah.
And is that success part of the next chapter, God of Thunder, the boot camp? Because at that point, what Kiss did, basically, they reached their limit. And if they weren't pushed harder, would they have continued this line of success?
Yeah, and I got accused of making this a Bob Ezrin love story, and it was. You know, I'm a fan, so I wanted to meet Bob, and I spent a year trying to track him down. That's why you could add a whole year onto my work in this book, which also helped me because it forced me to go back and make the chapters better and get more people on record and have more research. But once I got Bob, you know, I was able to understand his true genius and what he did. And I think that a lot of what you hear in Destroyer is the culmination of what I think Kiss is. And they, you know, Paul gives up God of Thunder for Gene so he can have his signature song. They allow Peter to do this whole song with strings. They let Bob kind of dictate to them what to do and all that stuff. So I think that changed the whole dynamic of the band. I think I'm answering your question. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I got off
you
on a
are.
tangent.
You are.
Yeah, I think it did change the whole dynamic of what Kiss was, and that's what Bob does. He paints pictures with sound. I think Corky Stasiak says that Barry Manilow had that ability. He would work with him on jingles. And one time he was in the studio, I put the story in my book, he was in the studio with a bunch of ad execs, and Barry Manilow was trying to put a tune together for soda or something. And the guy said, I just want to hear the music smile.
Yeah.
And Corky's like, what the hell does that mean? And Manilow goes, I know what that means. And he does it. And the ad exec goes, yeah, that's it. And Bob could do that. And that's what Kiss needed, right? Because they're a visual band. That's why Ken Kelly's painting is so seminal to the popularity of this record. When I got that record, it changed my whole viewpoint of what album covers can do. I mean, it's just so beautifully done. It truly is iconic. I mean, I know that word's overused, but so this album has it all. And Bob was able to put the visual into the sonic, and that's a real talent.
And what was the thinking behind, again, this is your next chapter now, Great Expectations. 2 points here. Number one, how did they get away with putting a song like Great Expectations? Number one. And then after Destroyer, what were the expectations of Kiss as a live band again?
Well, the funny thing about Great Expectations is if it wasn't for Bob working on Great Expectations with Gene, there wouldn't have been a Beth. Because when they were in that car, from what I understand, the car, and I put this story in the book, when Gene and Peter were in a car on the way, coming back from a gig, and they were trying to figure out a Peter vehicle. Bob had told me, they said, we need a song for Peter. We always have a song for Peter. They tried that, Ain't None of Your Business. Didn't work out so well.
Right.
It didn't work out so well. And I know that's on the box set. Bob didn't even remember recording it. He says, this is not even a drug thing. I just don't remember doing it. It wasn't that important, but and there was plenty of drugs. Certainly Bob was doing a lot of cocaine at the time, and he admits it, not as much as when he did The Elder. At this point, he was still using it as a real vehicle to creativity. It really destroyed Ace, but not so much Bob. But it was the openness of, sure, let's try a song and put a Beethoven, sonata in the middle of it, and let's have a choir in it. And it was that kind of experimentation that allowed, because when Peter's like, well, Bob's not going to want to do this, he goes, he's doing Great Expectations. So if he's doing that, he'll do a ballad. And, that's to Gene's credit. So Peter had the courage to go to Bob and sing that little song, and then give him the Stan Penridge tape of them doing it back in 71 or whatever it was, when he was in Chelsea or Lips. And and the rest is history. So Great Expectations just has a excellent story in and of itself, that it got us to Beth creatively. But as far as live is concerned, I don't think Kiss, even though they got a lot of crap for Destroyer because it's got a calliope on it and a choir and strings and all the things I was saying and a ballad, they toured the hell out of that. The Spirit of 76 tour, and again, I was around at the time. I was too young to go see them, but it was everywhere. It was a huge deal. And I don't think they ever missed a step. They constantly were great live. When they sold no records, when they sold lots of records, when they put calliopes on songs, when they did a disco song, it doesn't matter. Kiss toured and people showed up, at least until 80, 81. And then, the music business had changed. They'd become so bloated. But for that 4 or 5 year period, Kiss was great live no matter what the hell they were doing on the records.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe we're having this, this discussion. This is so great. It's not only we're talking about, the book, but we're having all this, additional information from you, James. This is awesome. This is unbelievable.
This is a lot of fun. I'm having a blast. All right.
Unbelievable. Me too. If we continue and basically we go to side B now. So the first song that we have there is Flaming Youth, and in your book, it's called the Origins of the Songs. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, the only thing, there's three different sections. The origins of the song in my book are, there's songs that the guys came with demos, and they came with a lot of demos. Now, I don't know how the first 3 records were made. I know that they had to make them quickly, second and third records, because they were on the road and they didn't have any time, and Casablanca didn't have any money, and they had to keep them on the road because that was the only money that was coming in. Excuse me.
Well, they were bringing back a lot of songs from the Wicked Lester, days and all of
right.
that. So,
Like right. I love her all I can. So they had time to build songs, and as you guys know, Gene brought like 30 songs to this project.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I know he released his Vault a couple of years ago, and a lot of them are on there. And you can get, I'm sure a lot of them are going to be on this box set. And Paul came with, I mean, just great songs. I mean, Detroit Rock City, obviously God of Thunder. So those are the first batch of songs you get on Destroyer. Remember, there's only 9 of them. Yeah. And then you have the second batch of songs, which are songs that they kind of Frankenstein together or Bob brought in. So Do You Love Me and King of the Nighttime World coming from another band. Do You Love Me is something that was crafted with Paul and Gene and Bob on the piano, and then given to the late great Kim Fowley, who wrote the lyrics for it. Then you have, and then obviously the biggie is Beth. So I did one more where we talk about Beth, because the story of Beth is again seminal to the popularity of this record, and I think the survival of Kiss.
Of the band,
the band, So that's great. You have 3 different sections, and I love the story of Flaming Youth, which is part of a Gene song, part of a Frehley song, and part of a Paul Stanley song, and them all coming together, again, all for one, one for all, and creating this thing with Bob, placing it together, and Bob telling Peter about 7/4 time, and then all, you know what I mean, and all the different things they had to do. They really pushed the envelope. I think it's also, if I may, Gene's finest work on bass. Bob said that he punched above his weight. He played, kind of like funk bass on this, in Sweet Pain, and in Detroit Rock City, that great bass run. I love his thunderous stomping in God of Thunder. Even his tasty bass playing on Great Expectations. Really, it's some really great work by Gene Simmons, who's really not known as music. And he'd be the first to tell you, I'm all about the show. Yeah. But I thought he played very, very well.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is that it was, all 4, writing and, playing their instruments, of course, with Bob, but no additional musicians, no phantoms there, that you never know who's playing. So that's amazing. And actually, to complement on your point, James, how Bob was pushing the envelope is, for instance, the instruments that they use in Flaming Youth, so they came up with these strange sounds in the middle of the song, like Paul, he had no idea, what it was going to be at the end of the song, but they basically, he dictated, how things needed to be done, and they accepted it. So the band accepted everything.
Yeah, I've often agreed with this, and I'm working on a book currently with Adam Duritz from Counting Crows, and he always says that every Counting Crows record has introduced new worlds. We bring you into that world for that 45 minutes. And I think that's what Destroy, it's like it brings you into a world.
Yeah.
Each song segues so beautifully into the other. You feel like you're being shown through this labyrinth of fantasy and this is what you want. And like I said, I can't separate the 13-year-old
you
kid.
can't.
I can't do it. I listen to it and I'm right back there again. It's
that's
so
right, exactly. That's beautiful.
And it makes me feel so great. And it got me through a lot of tough times. Yeah, when I was a kid.
Yeah. What about Sweet Pain, the whistle, the famous, boot camp and all of that. So
well, the thing that makes Sweet Pain most famous, as you know, is the late great Dick Wagner, who I was very I was very fortunate to I did the last long form interviews with Kim Fowley and Dick Wagner for anything, because both of them died. I started to feel very unlucky. I'm like, I got to stop interviewing people. Dying. But no. I mean, Kim was not well when I interviewed him. He had cancer for a long time. We talked quite a bit about that. That was an all-night discussion. It was classic Kim Fowley because he was in LA. I think the interview started around 12:30 and it went till about 4 a.m. in the morning. I said, wow, I got to go to bed, man. And then Dick, we did it over several days. And I got to know Dick very well. I wrote about him. I did a blurb for his book that came out, Not Only Women Bleed, which was a memoir, beautifully written book. Yeah, I have that. And it's just a wonderful book, right? And it was so, he was so demure and humble, and never ever said he was trying to be Ace, and never ever said that Ace couldn't cut it. This is what Bob did. Bob brought in people that he thought could play the certain things that he needed at that time. And that's another myth of this record, that Ace was playing cards or anything, or leaving, or not showing up. And that's not totally true either. I mean, Ace even told me, and Bob, not for the book, because I talked to Ace after the book came out, but Bob had told me Ace was just really intimidated by me being up his ass. And a lot of people don't work well with that. Not everybody works well with every type of producer. And that just didn't work for Ace. And that always breaks my heart, because I'm from the Bronx originally, and Ace is from the Bronx. So whenever we talk, we always say, forget about it. But it's always that I always rooted for him. So the fact that he kind of got left out of the story of Destroyer, which I tried to not do. I tried to show that Ace was trying, but he just wasn't making it on that side. And of course, he admits candidly in his book, No Regrets, that he was introduced to coke, and it really just ruined his life at that point.
He couldn't cope with that. You know, there's people who cannot actually work under pressure, you know, and I guess in the case of Ace, he was under so much pressure with Bob, you know, that so it's usual, you know.
And he did it to Glenn Buxton in the Alice Cooper group, and he had done it before. He had replaced guitarists for other
of course.
Dick Wagner is on quite a few tracks on School's Out and $1 Billion Babies. So it was a thing he did. But that's the real story. I love Sweet Bane because of the background singers. I love those background singers that sound like something out of, again, Motown or, you know what I mean, the OJs or the Silvers. You know, I love that stuff. It was very 70s.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hey, let's go into one of the classics, you know, Shout It Out Loud, you know, and in your book, you talk about the cover. You mentioned Ken Kelly before.
Yeah.
You know, something unbelievable. Even to this day, you know, you still, you know, you look at that cover and it brings you back to when you were a child. You know, it's unbelievable. Yeah, on to you.
I just tell everybody, read the Ken Kelly chapter. I can never tell you how much Ken meant to the book, meant to the project, the Kiss Destroyer project. Everything. I mean, his story is just incredible. The story how he got hired, the story how he had to do several versions of it. You know, painting from little Finn Costello slides of the band. You know, having his wife and him standing on stairs and acting like each guy and painting it out, and then them telling him, "Oh, they got new outfits now. You got to go back and repaint." And then, you know, Ken was so happy to talk about this, and he enjoyed his time with me so much. The great prize for me of the book was he drew the Destroyer cover and sent me a good luck to you with the book. He drew in hand.
Oh my God!
Wow. Sent it to me. My wife framed it for me and it's hanging in a very special spot in my home.
Wow.
Just one of the great gems of a. If I say, listen, even if you're not a Kiss fan, which if you're listening to this podcast, you are. Everybody who loves the struggling artist story, the guy who's got the talent and just needs the break. That's the story of the Ken Kelly chapter, and the fact that he, of all people, was the guy to be able to take Kiss from this weird oddity rock band to superhuman characters jumping off of a mountain. It's a wonderful story. And in essence, it's almost an illustrative of what Ken Kelly's story was when he came into the Destroyer Kiss, you know, camp, and how he ended up becoming a star, a sought-after artist.
Amazing. That chapter is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
You touched on Beth before. There's so much to talk about Beth. You know, many people say, and I agree, that that song saved Kiss. You know, management, they wanted to get Kiss, you know, in the mainstream, you know, in the radio, and the guys were not happy because even though they were happy with the album was not getting, you know, the play with the people that they think they deserve. But with Beth, you know, they nailed it.
They really did. And Scott Shannon, who is a great radio, there's like 8 radio Hall of Fames, and he's in all of them, something like that. The guy is amazing, but he was PR for Casablanca because he had amazing an amazing ability in the 70s to catch the AM thing. He understood the zeitgeist. I mean, he got the No No song, which is a famous song for Ringo Starr, on the charts. Nobody thought it would be, and he's like, that's the single. And it was. He had done that 5 or 6 or 7 times. So, Neil Bogart of Casablanca Records said, Scott, sprinkle some of this pixie dust on Kiss. We need to sell records. And he played him the record, and he said, Beth, that's a single. And they were like, no, that's not the single. It's a ballad. Peter sings it. He's not the main guy here. Well, I'm sorry, it's the single. So the story of that. He went back, got it, put A-side on it, sent it out to some friends in Boston. That's another myth about the thing. Oh, they didn't like Detroit Rock City, so they flipped over the B-side. That's not how it happened. He worked really, really hard to promote that record, and literally told DJs, don't tell people it's Kiss. Because they already have a preconceived notion that painted face guys that little boys like. This is a ballad, touching ballad that women will like, older people might dig it, and it had that perfect string sound for the 70s. I'm a sucker for that stuff. Even when I was a kid and I wanted to act tough and I was into rock music, I always had a soft heart for good pop ballads. And I'm sorry, that one just is.
Oh yeah, it is. It is definitely. That's the ultimate.
Yeah.
And let's wrap it up with "Do You Love Me?" So the legacy. I really loved this chapter when you talk about how now with time the album is finally recognized and it has the accolades that it deserves. So I think you said it perfectly in your book. So anything else that you would like to add for that chapter?
Just that and I agreed, and even the guys in Kiss feel that that's kind of their zenith. Even though at the time, like you said, they ran from it because they just panicked, and that's understandable. You know what I mean? Because their careers are on the line, as we talked about earlier. But the thing for me about, I think I start the chapter. It was almost serendipitous for me that when I finished the book, Beth was being used to sell a car. God of Thunder was being referenced by people online, calling Gene God of Thunder. And I was watching a Monday Night Football game from Detroit, and they played Detroit Rock City. So 3 songs from this record,
what else
played in 2016, is just that says it all. That just pretty much says it all. I did want to say one thing about Shout It Out Loud, since it is the name of the book. That song is so great because it was I think the last time that Paul and Gene wrote a song like that. Where I know they did it with for the Elder, but it's like he sings a verse, and it was like this great coming together. And by the way, it was the last song they recorded for the record, and they recorded it together, so they didn't piecemeal it. The rest of the record, they basically played, let's lay the drums down, then let's bring in the guitar. But this song, they just all came in one last time in the last week, I think, before mixing, and they recorded it, and that's great. It's all it's right there on the vinyl,
Awesome.
I mentioned earlier in the episode, when I get the box set, I'm going to put it out on the table and go through it, piece by piece. Well, I'm going to add this book on the table because in a sense, this is a part of that box set. It's a part of the history of that of Destroyer, and the box set is a continuation of everything covered in this book. Yeah. So, and right now it's a great time to be a Kiss fan. We've been waiting a long time for a box set like this. We shouted it out loud. They listened, and we're finally getting it. So, what are your general thoughts about the release of this box set?
Well, I love I'm getting older now, so I like anything that harkens back. And not just because I was saying, like, when I was younger, it makes me feel good and youthful and it brings me back and great memories. But I just like when things, especially for Kiss, because they're not really a legacy band. The legacy bands. And the Beatles come out with these giant Abbey Road things. Mm-hmm. The Stones come out with these big rollouts, and rightfully so. But I think Kiss deserves it for certain records, and certainly this one. So my thoughts are, I feel personally vindicated that I spent 3 years of my life writing about this record, that I spent my college years arguing about the primacy of this record in the history of rock music, about its quality, and that Bob gets, and I hope that, and I haven't read Ken's, because they kept it very hush-hush. So I didn't, a lot of people ask me, did they reach out to you? Did they quote anything? I have no idea. I have no idea if I was in any way help with this. I've had a lot of people write other things and they go to my book for it. I doubt it because Ken doesn't need me and he's got access to KISS.
Did you know, James, sorry to interrupt, did you know that this was coming out?
No, I did not. I was, like I said, when it came, I have a Facebook page for the Shout Out Loud a book, which I don't really update that much because, it's been out for a while. I have another, I had the Warren Zevon book come out and I've got the Hey Jude book coming out. So I haven't really updated a lot, but when I saw that pop up, I posted on there, this looks promising. They did a great job of keeping their mouths shut.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure maybe Ken might have wanted to reach out to me because I had a lot of stuff about, like I said, Dick Wagner and Kim Fowley and Bob that, Bob stopped talking about a lot of this stuff after my book. When he was interviewed for what I understand, for the Elder book, there was some friction between him and Paul. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I heard when Julian and I went out to dinner in New York City right before Peter Criss's final shows, and he was telling me about it, and I was like, "Ooh, that's interesting. I didn't know that." So I don't know. I didn't know the answer to your question, and I'm just as excited as any KISS fan out there, and I'm glad that I didn't have any idea about it because I wrote my book. It's not a KISS production. I didn't ask for their imprimatur. Gene Simmons did contact my publishing company, wanted to know about it. I'm sure the guys have seen it. I know Ace, I gave a copy to Ace, and we took a picture together when I did the interview, I think in 2017 about it. A copy was sent to Peter. So, but I don't know what the feedback would be, but I wanted it to be a true separate thing and just an objective commentary about that album in that time. But I am so looking forward to reading Ken's take on this and what he did there in Uncovered.
This is a huge moment for all of us. And what's your take on all the extra stuff offered in the set?
I love it. I mean, I think I don't know what's in it. I know they got the cards, the pictures. I know they have a recreation of that tour book, which I've never seen. I've seen pictures, but it would be nice to have that. I'm not so much for the tchotchkes. I'm glad they put them in there because that's classic KISS, and I'll take these back to my childhood. But I'm very much looking forward to the new Abbey Road mix. I understand there's a Blu-ray mix that is amazing in it.
Yeah.
And to the demos and the live disc. And the only thing I'm disappointed is there's no video. Excuse me, they didn't do the Jersey City one. They didn't do the Anaheim show. That would have been nice to clean that stuff up. Do what Peter Jackson's doing with the Let It Be footage. And provide that for the box set. That would have been really cool.
Oh yeah.
What live show are they putting in there? Is that when they went to Europe before the record came out, or right when the record came out? Do they play Destroyer songs on that live? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Pascal.
Well, I don't have it on the top of my head now. But
no, I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, I don't remember when. But because I know it's not from what I understand, it's not from the Spirit of '76 tour. That's as much as I know. I think they do a couple of Destroyer songs, but I think they weren't even wearing the new uniforms for that particular live recording.
Maybe it's before that. Okay.
But I'm very much looking forward to hearing that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just looking forward to hear the sonically clean versions of these demos.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the demos and the outtakes and the alternate versions that's being offered in the box set?
Yeah, I like I said, I can't wait to hear them, because they're going to be clean and they're going to sound good. And, one of the things I read about in the book, and I know KISS fans know this and fans of Destroyer, Gene and Paul both went to Magna Graphic Studios in Greenwich Village and recorded full demos, some of them with Ace on them, some of them with J.R. Smallings, who was their the guy who, he was their tour manager, but he's the guy who came up with, "You're one of the best." And so these are fully produced, demos. It's not just Gene on an acoustic guitar in his bedroom. These are fully produced, and so they deserve to be cleaned up. And again, some of them are on the original box set that KISS put out in '96.
Yeah.
Some of them, I'm sure, I didn't know what's in Gene Simmons' vaults, but this is what I tried to do in my book. A lot of people, the only criticism I got in my book from KISS fans is like, "Oh, he's quoting other KISS books. He's going back and telling his stories we already know." But I wrote this book for people who don't know anything. So they need to know the story. And I'm trying to put everything in there that has to do with Destroyer. So if you want to read about Destroyer, you go to my book. If you want to read about the whole story of Kiss and Destroyer's in that story, then you could read the other stuff. But it seems crazy to me to have a book about Destroyer without every comment that Kiss made about Destroyer in Circus Magazine, in Cream Magazine, in Rolling Stone Magazine, and everything else that was said. And I have a friend of mine who's quite a few friends who are great researchers. I have one friend of mine who's a historian, and he said to me, you know, when you interview people in their 70s about stuff that happened 50 years ago, they're not going to, the fish always gets bigger. You know, the story of the,
that's right.
You know, it's better to go back and take those quotes of the 26-year-old Paul Stanley and how he felt about recording Destroyer. And I'm glad I put that stuff in the book. But yeah, I can't wait to hear these demos.
But I don't agree with that critique, though, because yeah, you might have taken quotes from other books, but you put it together in a different perspective.
Oh, thank you. I thought so, yeah.
And that's what makes it interesting. And even this box set, it's the same thing. We have most of these songs on bootleg vinyls and CDs and stuff.
Of course. Yeah.
But it's going to be the quality and the pack, everything, the whole experience. It's a different musical perspective. And
that's why they do these box sets, right? So the idea is 100 years from now, if we're not all underwater, let's just say 100 years, our children's children will get to listen. I want to know about Destroyer. I want to know, and it's all there. It's like a compendium. It's an encyclopedia about this one record. The full story. It's got the booklet in there. It's got all the promo materials, which were so huge in the 1970s and specifically big for Kiss. And also it's got how the songs came together. And because Bob was so influential and wrote 7 of the 9 songs, he had his hands on, and it wasn't one of those situations where change that line or put in a minor instead of a major.
No.
He sat in the room with these guys and fashioned these songs, dragged it out of them. And so to hear the demos and see the difference about the finished product from the demos, it's to me, that's an excellent point. It's why you do these box sets. I mean, I know that sounds haughty and crazy for a Kiss album, or really any album. It's like, get over yourself, okay? This is not the Iliad. But if you're going to do a box set, put it all in there and give us everything so we can really, one day, 4 generations from now, someone wants to know about this Kiss Destroyer thing, it's all in there. They don't have to go and piecemeal it together with bootlegs. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you know there's a huge expectations, you know, on the box set coming out. And as Pask was saying before, your book, James, it's part of that. So in order to have the full experience, you have to be with the book next to you, you know, read a couple of chapters, listen to the music. Yeah. In my case, I'm telling you, so when everybody was asking me, hey, what's your favorite album? I always said that it was Alive, okay? But after reading your book, as I said, twice and going with the audiobook and everything, I can say that my all-time favorite, you know, studio album is Destroyer, because now you have all this minutia, all this story and how the guys got together, you know, to come up with that album. Even, you know, Bob teaching them music, you know, from the get-go, you know, writing music on the dashboard. So it gives the album much more value than just, you know, listening to the album as any other artist. You know,
I'm so glad I did that for you, Claudio, because when you ever watch those, excuse me, I review music books. When I read a music book and they're writing about an album or they're writing about an artist, I find myself listening to that artist material for like a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then discovering like a Van Morrison album that I never really knew was that good, or a Lou Reed record.
Right.
And you ever watch those classic albums documentaries? They're like an hour, and you say to yourself, how did I miss that? And then you listen to the album and it blossoms for you. So when someone says that to me, it's the greatest compliment, because that's what other people's work does for me. So if I could pay it forward and say, hey, think about this album in a different way. I've had some of the guys, you know, the guys on other podcasts and other radio shows when I was promoting this, they said, you know what, I never really loved Destroyer, but I really like it now, because I not that I agree with everything you wrote, but it made me go back and listen to the record with new ears and discover new things. And that's why we write. That's why writers write. And that's why we love to do the research to share it. Because you're not going to spend years of your life on something if you don't truly love it. And people who do, I think, are insane. Because writing is hard. and it's isolating and it's frustrating, but it's also rewarding when you find something new, or you do an interview and someone tells you something so cool, you know, or you get to meet an Alice Cooper or Bob Ezrin, and you get to talk to the great Dick Wagner before he passes, and he tells you the intimate secrets of how he laid guitar down for Aerosmith and Alice Cooper and Kiss, and how he made those records better. So it's so great to hear you say that. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a huge experience. You know, your book, it's something amazing. I was coming back to what you said. You know, writers, but you're going to agree with me. There's many different ways of writing. Okay, and to write about a Kiss record, it's really hard not to fall on the same trap as usual, you know, talking about the visuals and talking about the music, you know, the band members, but you touch on some specific nerves on your album that I think I haven't seen any other book like yours, you know, and the fact that you did it for Destroyer, it brings even more value, you know, to the Kiss fans. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I did want to make the point, and I know Pasquale brought it up earlier, you know, when I call the band The Act, and I use that term, I've done this a lot in my writing, where I take something and I try to, like for my Warren Zevon book, I call it the Warren Zevon Corner, because he's such a specific artist. His fandom are different than the mainstream, because he's not a mainstream artist. In this case, I wasn't doing it pejoratively or negatively in any way. What I was saying is that Kiss created this thing that they can fit their bodies into, not just their face makeup, not just the uniforms. They fit their egos, they fit their hopes and dreams into this thing. That's not a band. I don't think Kiss is a band. It's some weird sort of culty subculture movement. And even their songs, even, you know, when some writers would tell me, you know, it's the idea that there's a Kiss army is different than a fan club. Right. There's something about it. So I think The Act was a key point for them to create this thing, and we bought into it. You buy into it, you know?
Yeah, that's why when you, you know, the very beginning, when you were saying that once you're hooked with Kiss, it's for life, you know, and that doesn't happen with many other bands. So they have fans for sure, but with Kiss, it's always something else, you know. It's very hard to explain. Very hard to explain.
Yeah, and I see you also right behind you, a poster that I had in my bedroom when I was a kid. The Spirit of '76 tour is right behind your head there. But I was going to say that, I never, even when I got away from Kiss, I never poo-pooed them. Like, I know a lot of kids would be like, that's so 8th grade, that's so years ago. And, you know, when all the young kids were coming out, or when they did, you know, I Was Made for Loving You, which I think is probably Paul's third best song he's ever written. There was a lot of people who ran, you know, off the reservation. I never did. I just didn't listen to the music because I didn't really love Unmasked, right? I didn't really like a lot of the no makeup songs because I had totally moved on musically. But I didn't go and trash the records that meant something to me, like this Dress to Kill. And so I've always thought that Kiss did get in my DNA, and I enough to spend that much time. I remember a couple of fellow authors were like, "Why are you doing this?"
Right.
And because I really love it, and I'll try to. I'm glad you're asking, because that's why I'm putting it in the book, and maybe you'll read it and you'll understand why I did it.
Hey, James, just to wrap up, you know, I think we can't avoid asking ourselves these questions. So with this release, with the Boxset release, so fans are going to ask, what's next? Okay, so in your opinion, what should be the next Boxset, you know, and why?
Well, everybody tells me that Argue is with me, that Rock and Roll Over is the greatest Kiss album, and I'm a nut. So maybe that, because I hear that there's a lot of material there since they recorded live at that theater. I would think that it would have to be Alive. To me, if you put, like I said, I am not going to say Alive is better or worse than Destroyer. I just think Destroyer is I call it a manifesto, a great statement by Kiss. To me, it's their ultimate statement. If you're going to put it in a time capsule, shove that in there, and then people will know what Kiss is. Kiss Alive is much more what Kiss really is to many of the fans, and kept them alive, as I said earlier, no pun intended, by being on stage and keeping that whole thing pumping. So I would think, me personally, I want to hear all of the Eddie Kramered, overdubbed, original live shows that were taped in the truck,
Yep.
in the parking lot. I would love to whole box set of that stuff. Would love to hear that myself. And obviously it deserves it because everybody thinks that even if they don't agree about Destroyer or even Rock and Roll Over, there's not a Kiss fan alive. There's not a fan of rock and roll music. Even Rolling Stone magazine, or even that finally got Kiss into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Nobody argues that Kiss Alive is not one of the most seminal live albums ever.
Mhm.
And so I think that needs to. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about what the next box set would be? What do you think deserves it?
Claudio, what do you think?
I think I agree with you. I think it should be Alive. That's I just mentioned that to me. Alive. It's the ultimate, Kiss experience along with Destroyer. I would love to have more material from Alive. Definitely.
Cool. Yeah.
My opinion. I mean, if you talk about Kiss and what is the album that really defines who Kiss is, it's Destroyer, and hence the box set. If you take it a step further, in terms of live albums, yeah, it has to be a Kiss Alive. It redefined the band, just like Destroyer redefined the band. And there would be no Kiss without Alive, without Destroyer.
Of course.
So I would definitely I would love to see a box set of Alive. Absolutely.
Cool. I was very, very surprised. I loved the last thing they released, the From the Board.
The soundboard.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really good.
Mhm.
Really good. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, is that like the only show they have released or that people have heard where Singer is playing with Ace?
Yes.
Yep.
I was very impressed by that. The recording, the band, how they're playing, how tight they are.
Yeah.
They sound like they're having a blast. So I wish, obviously, a lot of people have talked about Kiss Alive 2. There's a whole new generation of people. That was their entry, right?
Yeah.
And then, and double platinum, that era. And a lot of people feel like there's so many board recordings from that tour, because by that point they were huge, so they could afford it. Kiss Alive, they were just like, let's just mic everything and hope for the best,
That's right. Yeah.
So there might be crap, there might not be anything. It might be mythological that there are worth a shit.
Right.
But I think for Kiss Alive 2 there is. But I just think because Kiss is such a seminal live band, and because there's such a myth around how much overdubbing was done on Kiss Alive, it would be nice to hear those. Because if you watch the San Francisco show from '74, that black and white San Francisco show at the Winterland, there's a clip of Kiss playing Black Diamond on YouTube from like the midnight special. Yeah. It is unbelievably good. It's kick-ass tight.
Yeah, the energy, it's amazing.
And the playing. They're playing well. This idea that, because things are blowing up and they're jumping around, that they're half-assing the chords. I get it on an audio sense. Kramer is listening to this going, we got to overdub that. We got to fix that. That's a flub. I can't hear the bass there. That I get, because live albums are forever. Shows are only captured and you go home, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that Kiss can't play because they were overdubbed, everybody overdubbed, by the way. Frampton Comes Alive, all these things are overdubbed. But when I see those examples, Kiss was a great live band.
Oh yeah, they could play
musically.
Oh yeah, they could play. Yeah.
So to close the show, James, again, I want to thank you for being on our podcast.
Fun.
I can't believe we're sitting here talking to you about your book, about Destroyer. It's an amazing experience. This is the reason we started the podcast, is to talk Kiss and to talk about Kiss with somebody of your caliber. It's incredible. So thank you again for coming on our show. Deeply appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me. I love talking about Kiss. Thank you for liking the book and your kind words. All the honor and pleasure is mine. What you guys do with people who will podcast, I podcasted for a couple of years, and it's difficult, you coming up with new stuff and talking about it. But you guys are engaging. I've watched some of your earlier podcasts to prepare for this, and I think you got a good thing going. So keep it up. I'm excited about the box set. I know you guys will probably do a whole episode, and I'll be watching, unboxing it or talking about it. It's just, and I really was moved by you guys saying, hey, the book belongs in that section, because I hope
Definitely.
I'm glad that in 2015 I was able to get people back to thinking about Destroyer again and how important this was. And I hope this thing sells well. It looks like it is. So they will do other packages. And again, I'm not as big a fan of some of the other Kiss albums, but if Kiss fans gobble this up, then they deserve to get more of this type of material, I think.
Absolutely. Just give me a couple of just a minute, to my closing remarks. As Pasc was saying, this has been a very special night, James. Let me tell you, for our podcast, this is a true, fantastic experience, and I hope that all the audience, they're going to enjoy this episode as much as we are having such a blast with you. So thank you for being so cool, so humble. Thank you for the material. And hey, by the way, maybe we can have another episode. Once we get the box set, and we can talk about it. Anytime.
I've got plenty more stuff to talk about. You just wind me up and I go. But you guys are doing a great job. Thank you so much. I feel very comfortable chatting with you guys. You're excellent at this. So keep up the good work. And again, thank you so much for the kind words for the book. It was a labor of love, and to hear that people really responded to it and inspired people to listen to Destroyer again with a new set of ears. And
absolutely,
they worked their ass off, and it's a great record. I'm sorry, it's a great record.
It really is. It really is.
It's awesome.
So James, thank you once again.
Thank you.
These guys.
To the Kiss Army, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. And remember, everyone, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone.
Ciao, everybody.
The Kiss Army Nation podcast has partnered up with Click T-Shop to offer our listeners a high-quality T-shirt with graphic design by Xander Graphics. Check out Click T-Shop at clickteeshop.com.